And really, it is by far the ultimate, one of the most ultimate teachings of my lifetime. In this life of mine, I have found nothing. I don't want to say nothing, but the relationship of the self with the world in the title of today's talk is kind of conclusion of it. I remember one night I was kind of sitting in contemplation, and I was, what is the purpose of activity? What is the purpose of energetic activity? What is, in some reason, for doing things when there is an end? And it was then that I kind of felt like the logos, the intuitive knowing, sense of knowing, kind of tell me appreciate the presence of your soul. And I don't know what it was. It was just that thought in that time, in that moment of my life, made second direct my attention away from an inevitable end to what is here now. And I realized we are all living in a civilization that we don't value what now, we value what will be here now. Most people are motivated by who they will be or what they want to be or what they want. Nice. One black, one white, and it's metaphoric for the yin yang symbol, you can say, for chaos and order. The white mouse and the black mouse come out and start chewing the wines. This guy's like, what the fuck? He's freaking out. He's like, what is this? You know? And meantime, he looks, sees the inevitability. And it's as if the mice kind of represent how throughout time, chaos and order will change things. This man is there holding on these wines, and he looks to his right and he sees this voluptuous strawberry. He sees this strawberry that is like the best strawberry. He picks it up and he takes a bite as the mice are chewing the vines. Of life were bypassed. The perception of suffering was bypassed by the presence of the simple presence of a strawberry in the moment. We bypassed the man's psychology, in other words. So, so what I mean by this is that kind of appreciation of your soul is appreciating the simplicity of how phenomena is being. If you look at what human beings tend to want, it seems to be some complex destination usually. Very few people are okay with what they have because life appears as some sort of source, and this energy source can be directed, and it is primarily directed by the type of world that the person sees. So what does that mean? That means if you feel everybody out there in the world is there to get you, you're not going to trust anybody. You know, if you feel everybody in the world is great, greater than you, you will yield of greatness. You will be like, okay, time for me to be great, you know? So that's the thing, that our civilization has made it okay to efficiency. And of course, there's different human beings with different abilities and capabilities. But to appreciate the presence of your soul is the soul, of course. The word is a derivation, and it comes from breath. In ancient cultures, the soul was the breath. Pretty much, they saw people. Air was in their lungs. They were alive. They were animate. The air would leave their body, and it would be like it's as if they're. And to whoever is listening, please let me know if the voice is if what I'm saying is off or not. I think if it is, it has to do with the streaming software I'm using. But anyways, The simple teaching. This is something that Mr. Within will tell all human beings. Honor your attention in this lifetime. Honor the efforts that you honor the simplicity of your being, and then you will be able to acknowledge the complexity of all action. It's only when we forget to accept ourselves that the world will not accept us. It's as if only when if you can't forgive your, why should others? If you can't see the ability in yourself, why should others? Something that took me a while to grasp, that in the world to change you, you may get lucky or it may not. But if you change yourself, you get to see what happens. And it's all about establishing a relationship with an unknown self, because that is really what the future is. All the unknown ways you will exist as image has been holding them. Itself fixes itself up. Civilizations rise and fall. Psychologies change. In every moment of history, a mindset tries to capture it all, only to see there will be other mindsets. To appreciate the presence one is existing in the moment is an acknowledgement of how experience is being. And so to study the experiencer, in this talk I'm going to go into a Upanishad quote tunnel. But I'll tell you, what if the greatest teaching of them all, what if the greatest thing a human could know was not in language, was not as character in a story or something about the setting? It's as if energy got offended by the concept of life and death and eternally tried to prove itself it can never die. And philosophy is a very interesting field of study. Ultimately, philosophia means love of wisdom, and wisdom came with what was tangible in the experience. So you, as a human being, are experiencing life, and as your experience of life is animated and appearing to you a certain way, the way life appears to you, or even very profoundly, if you look at, if you when we talk about a person, their conditioning is the sequence, the unique sequence of how phenomenology was exposed to them, and the unique inner sequence of how they held it. So you can say a person, let's say 10 different things happened to them, and if what happened to you throughout the day, they might say like 6 things. They may feel as if like, 3 things, different things that happen to the person could be categorized as the same. And that's the cool thing, that sometimes I've gone through an intense experience and someone's like, yo man, what happened, how'd you go through that? And I was like, at the time I had no idea I was going through it, so it was very simple. And so I noticed is the power of what is it is what we experience in our life is what has been kind of accessed. So my considerations of reality is that I started off as an individual of personality. In other words, a subject that thought it was an individual object. And so later on, I can say, like various moments in my life, suddenly I noticed that mysterious unknown factor that I was capture at the edge of my eye was how, regardless of any sort of personality that I have felt in this life, they have all been present. every experience of my life I have ever had, I have been present. It's as if the awareness to self has not changed. This type of self in the awareness has changed. Um, okay. I remember in I rem- I think it was 2016. I was in India, in Rishikesh. I was there for 2 months. Somehow, you know, I found my life taking me there, and I was there for a couple months. And right after, um, it was closer to Iran, where I was born. I went to Iran to kind of for the summer, to be with my kind of family and cousins and parents, you know. And so I remember going to Iran and finding myself in a moment where there's something cool about Iran that I don't think many people are aware of in the world. So Iran, in it's like nations from the outside a certain way, and then from an inside look a certain way. What that means is the mind considers itself the knower of activity. And to be a social creature, this knower of activity must be individualized. To be an exists in the moment, if the dimension of time was taken out, is just phenomenal. So in other words, one person can't go to another person and be like, yo, I'm existing more than you. You know, it's like actually we're all existing. So since is seen to be a singular phenomena in the void, we're going to see experience is a dualistic phenomena in the void. Experience requires the self, the object and subject, and the observer of the object and the subject. Like right now, if somebody asks, screen of perception, and then you'll be at the same like, but who did this person, who did Mr. Within ask the question from? And that who is too dynamic to be defined to be captured in a static way. That means when we speak about life, trying to take photographs of something, but when we experience life, it is like a film. So we can say we are characters in a film trying to contemplate it in accordance to a snapshot mode. When a person has a system, pretty much to me that means that person took a photo of one moment conceptually and has decided that moment shouldn't change. And believe it or not, in life, two things. First of all, it's all you dislike one thing and it can endlessly dislike everything in your moment. And if you like something, you can endlessly like it. You know, that's the cool thing of finding greatness like a diamond in the dirt. Like a diamond in the dirt of your own being. That means I have had moments where I have had to, you know, it's like every time a person sleeps, it's like, bravo, you have to let go of every idea you had and enter a deep sleep state and then wake up. As far as I'm concerned, every living human being has been their whole life to be in thought and outside of thought, to be a creature and to be just presence. And they're so elegant when you start respecting the presence of life. When I say respect, it doesn't mean like bowing down like there is a kingdom within you where the crown you're wearing, where it's not an individual wearing a crown, the king of the inner realm is a field of intelligence. This may be uncommon to the human mind because I'm speaking a bit ahead, you know. I feel this may sound strange, but I feel I I probably should have been born like 200 years later, you know. 200, 400 years. Anyways, even God makes mistakes sometimes. I'm joking. Even the mistakes of God are correct decisions. Because really, ultimately, at the end of the day, how we evoke the image suggests. So I am telling you, it took me a while to realize language reflects truth but cannot hold it. Cannot. That means it's like, beliefs are boxes. I can totally tell you, I believe the whole universe is shaped like a cup, like an iced cappuccino. And like the glass of that's holding the iced cappuccino is like, the edge of our universe, and the iced cappuccino universe. And so I could start believing that the whole universe is an iced cappuccino. So you see, that belief doesn't help though. It's literally like, okay, ostrich mode, put your head in the dirt of belief. And it doesn't mean beliefs are dirty, but it just means that anything that, this was years ago, where that sense of, as my sense of self diminished, went towards a sort of kind of like zero value. In that moment, I was like, why? Like my mind was a bit upset, and I was like, why should I exist? Why? What is the point of existing? What is the point of life when there is an end? Da 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 da. You know. And then my mind was like, but there's still a lot of stuff you don't know. And so, continue. And that simple sentence, why not? It kept my attention on existence. And really, suffering is not the problem. The problem is, suffering is just part of how the road is designed. On the sidewalk, do you care about how the concrete is? Nature was a part of their psychology. It was an intimate part of their psychology, right? But when we speak about taking a substance to alter your perception, um, uh, I feel that a person can update their phone to get better signal, or they can step outside of where they are to get better signal. So imagine you're in the base, or let's say you're standing beside like somewhere, some coffee shop that has Wi-Fi, and you have an older phone, so the Wi-Fi of it is weaker, so you don't see the thing. So it's like either you can change the objectivity to change subjectivity, or use subjectivity to change your objectivity. So people who go to the psychedelic path, they are actually feeling that they have to change the material condition to be able to become aware of an immaterial condition, or on conditions of immateriality, you know. So if you are looking for images, if you are looking for symbols, feel psychedelics can advance the creativity of the person, simply because it's like eating good food. You after you eat that food, a certain taste, you have a certain emotion you bring back from the experience. It's kind of like dreaming while you're awake. So this is my biggest concern, that a person who becomes aware that they are not a thought, the psychedelic mind will not change will not appear to them as a thought, will have more of an emotional experience. But anyways, to give you a short answer, AP, I'll say this. Um, it changes the antenna. And so with a new antenna, you see new stuff. But I feel this life, in two dimensions, the objective realm and the subjective realm. And I feel whether you consume some chemical, a chemical route, or you don't take a chemical route, it doesn't matter, because it's like on it's simultaneously in the moment. You're not just being a body that mind around you. You're also experiencing your free will as a mind that is see where is intelligence arising from in the moment. Because some things your attention can animate. We wonder what is governing this body. We say it's a mind. So, in other words, minds are governing bodies. Minds are the chariot drivers, and the horses are dancing. So, in the mountain Arunachala in India, that's a kind of mountain where a lot of yoga and whatnot. So, what happens is Papaji is this guy, this kind of like young guy who is seeking truth. Papaji's like, Krishna is dancing with me. I'm dancing with God. Can you imagine? Can you imagine like someone's dancing? Like, who are you dancing with? And the guy's like, I'm dancing with the divine, with the source of existence, with like an image of with Krishna. And so this is where she means it's like, wow, on a rock in the middle of nowhere, people are suffering. There isn't any greater comedy than that, guys, than our existential condition. You know, it's like comedians, what are they doing talking about the unknown? In other words, when Carl Jung says, unless you make conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Unknown, and the knower accelerates. Distrust the unknown and will stop itself in the track of an eternal journey. It will stop itself in it. I have had moments where I have thrown archetypes out of the moment. I have thrown like even though I tend not to touch like wisdom I've attained. Not I don't want to make it sound like that, but it's like what I've noticed in this life. In regards to my inner, I try not to touch it too much. What that means is touching something, not physically speaking, not non-physically speaking. In other words, for example, when I hold a cup and I physically put down that cup, after I've put it down, the thought of the cup doesn't linger in my attention. That's what I mean by not touching, by like whatever. Even if you touch something, you grabbing it, you know. So I stopped chasing. I stopped chasing truth. And in my child push to chase truth, it was like run after truth and be a good boy. And I was like, okay, thanks, you know. And I'm running, and I'm like, oh god. And I'm telling you, it's like that's when respect can in your personal dimensions. You know, it's like I remember hearing somewhere that they said the true art of masculinity, and this thing that I'm saying, you can see it even in the same approach in regards to femininity, but they were seen as art forms. They were seen as modes of art. So imagine there's an art to being yourself, you know, an artistry to it. Others are receiving it. So feel free to share how the talk's coming across. Um, anyways, The person in the chariot, it's your presence. Personality is the chariot driver. This is why they say control your attitude or your attitude controls you. And a lot of people, when they get emotional, because they feel their inner realm is the justification of the outer realm, they don't become attitude. That means that person who's singing in the shower, that person is not thinking of them being themselves as being something. They're just in the presence of, you know. With that person, like the president giving a speech, that person has to be a very strong archetype to endure that kind of pressure. For me, what life is just like how plants grow in a certain way, human beings' minds unravel in certain ways. And it's all about the efficiency of the system, because we can be said to be, if you look at like nature, you see all the birds, you see birds from the sky rhythmically, you see a school of fish swimming together, you see even wolves run together. And so you see that in nature there is a tribe of advancement process going on, you know, where commonality, it's like there's a connection that's something beyond any individual's ability. So for me, it's like we have to start building an advanced civilization, and the only way to do it is by looking at what kind of civilization we have, because there's two conditions to it. It's like, one, we can't change the old world because so many people still dependent on the ideas of the old world. So in other words, we have to create a new world, but this new world shouldn't reinvent the wheel. In other words, we have to, for the first time, collectively as a species, rebuild a new ego to our collective self, a new narrative, a new ethos, a new inspiration. Because the way the world can be seen for now, evident that because we all have different DNA and different eyes, we are different angles of the world. That means it's like that's the cool thing about the human mind. That's why I feel in ancient times there was the concept of marriage was very key, because it would take a lifetime to get to know a person. Studying a world that is moving the self, you know? So, in other words, when the world is static, which is a problem is something that's just there, you know? So, tends to move is the self. So, in other words, I observe a problem through a simple self and through a complex self. And that means we out of it. And honestly, what is life? It is pretty much like digging. Not digging, like miner searching for rare crystals in a mine. You know, it's like you apply effort, then get a certain feedback. Apply effort and feedback. Now, most people, the reason development can slow down is because the quantity being applied in the moment is reduced. That means it's like there is this mentality, of course, it's better to make a mistake than forgiveness than not to make the mistake. This isn't the best sort of advice, but it's something that's said. But I shift like this. Once you realize it's an opportunity, anything that becomes important for you, you will advance. Anything that's not important for you, you won't. You know, if for example plants in the Amazons are important for you, that your life will move that way. Your attention is piloting you that way. But if for example a textbook about quantum physics becomes important for you, then your attention moves that way. And if you begin wondering for yourself as a human being, for you, that is the one of the nicest ways to wash your mind in the morning. To just wake up and wonder, all right, another day. What is this day? Where is the value? What is elegant about the movement of phenomena? It's about seeing that the world is beautiful, even if that beauty doesn't have a definition yet. It's the beauty of just instantaneous being. There's a joy in it. I don't know. There's this in just being here as a being. And it's like just being conscious of existence is a finale of phenomena, as if we exist to experience, and once we're content with the experience, watch your habits, they become character. Watch your character, for it becomes you are what your deep driving desire is. As your desire is, so is your will. As is, so is your deed. As your deed is. Just a second, guys. I gotta find. Okay, continue with the quote tunnel. From the Taittiriya Upanishad, it says, "Speak the truth. Speak the truth. Practice dharma. Do not neglect the study of the Vedas. Treat your mother as God. Treat your father as God. Teacher as God. Whatever deeds are faultless, these are to be performed, not others. You should conduct yourself in such a way Brahmanas would conduct themselves. Brahmanas who are competent to judge, who of their own accord are devoted to good deeds and are not urged to their performance by others, who are not cruel but are lovers of Dharma. This is the teaching. This is the secret wisdom of the Vedas. This is the command of God." Another quote from the Taittiriya Upanishad: Trisanku proclaimed after the attainment of the knowledge of the self, "I am the mover of the universe. My fame rises high like a mountain peak. My root is the supremely pure Brahman. I am the unstained essence of the self. Unstained. I am the treasure. I am the shining wisdom. I am immortal and imperishable." We don't see those new age law of attraction people, say this is an affirmation in the morning. In the Ishvashya Upanishad, seeing matrix on your projector, uh, projected on the wall of your at night years ago, and then imagine Neo is so aware in the movie he doesn't even realize it's matrix simulation. In the Ishvashya Upanishad, it says, "He, the Self, is all pervading, radiant, bodiless, spotless, all powerful, pure, untouched by sin, and all knowing, transcendent, and self existent. He assigns duty and properly gives the fruits of one's karma." In the Shvetashvatra Upanishad, "All faces are his faces, all head his heads, all necks his necks. He causal hearts of all beings. He is the all-pervading Bhagavan. Therefore, he is the omnipresent and merciful Lord." You see, guys, they had to behaviorally inspire people towards this back in the day. So it's like, what would people most buy? Humble archetype. So you got to see evolution in hunter-gatherer societies as the most foundational emotion that kept them together. Be something to someone. So be something to a sense of being something to your tribe. So when a person saw the concept of a lord, it was the concept of like someone who had achieved. So the divine lord was kind of like the ultimate archetype in the primitive mind, you know. So, anyways, in the Ishvashya Vasya Upanishad, Know that all this, whatever moves in this moving world, is enveloped by God. Therefore, find your enjoyment. Do not covet what belongs to others. Again, I think interchangeable with the word God can be nature, can be, I mean, language is just symbol attribution. You know, people, it's kind of crazy when you think about it that war started in the minds of people. What was in the minds of people was language. So one can blame miscommunication for as the source of all war, or the lack of awareness to the better potential. It's like, as Isaac Asimov says, violence is the last refuge of the incompetent. So and the only way you know how to release it is violence. So you as a person have to realize, okay, that be expressed differently. And so my realization is just like how a person picks up trash, they must internalize chaos. What does that mean? That means rather than being violent in the moment, you must confront that flame internally, to extinguish that flame internally. And usually my advice is that anytime, it's like move away from inefficiency is, what is it? Ernest Hemingway. He says like, don't wrestle with a pig, you'll get muddy. You know? And so violence is like, excuse me, but it's like pig level consciousness. It's a dirty use of mind, you know? The mind is here to play better melodies, you know, than violence. There are greater symphonies to be heard from our civilization. It's like I just feel it's just beginning. Something incredible is beginning. It's like better than all video games is what's going to happen to our civilization in the next 1,000 years. In the Brihadaranya, how do you say this? Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. It says, "You are what your." Oh, I read this, but I'll read it again. You are what your deep driving desire is. As your desire is your will. As your will is, so is your deed. As your deed is, so is your destiny. In the Brihadaranya, the same Upanishad, it says, "This earth is the honey." Madhu, the effect of all beings, and all beings are the honey Madhu effect of this earth. So this earth, in the Katha Upanishad, it says, know the self to be, oh, there we go. Know the self to be sitting in the chariot, the body to be the chariot, the intellect the charioteer, and the mind the reins. Okay, so this is a different way of engaging it. So let me see. Self to be sitting in the chariot. So your truth is in the chariot. Their roads. Wow, the Upanishads just took that metaphor I shared to another. I don't know, guys, but I have sometimes read something so fast, I put the book down and just started slow hand clapping for the author. The senses they call the horses, the objects of the senses their roads. When he, the higher self, with the body, the senses, and the mind, then wise people call him the enjoyer. Yeah, it's just realizing balance was here before, and then you calm down, and everything abides in accordance to how your attention is, how intense your and important your own attention is. I'm telling you, magic back in the day was all about attention manipulation, and it was because language could be like a program inputted into another person. So in other words, it's like language. Trust me, you can hold the. You can use language as if it's a red lightsaber or it's a green or if you're Samuel Jackson, especially a purple one for you. In the Katha Upanishad it says, "The wise who knows the self as bodiless within the bodies, as unchanging among changing things, as great and omnipresent, does never grieve. That self cannot be gained by the Veda, nor by understanding, nor by much learning. He whom the self chooses, the self can be gained. The self chooses him, his body, as his own. But he who has not first turned away from his wickedness, tranquil and subdued, or whose mind is not at rest, he can never obtain the self even by knowledge." And let me tell you why, because you're on the wrong radio channel. That's the whole thing, guys. We are self-obsessed individual temporary biological beings only to realize best attempts so far at seeing ourselves. In the Katha Upanishad, see how it was with those who came before, how it will be with those who are living. Like corn, mortals ripen and fall, like corn again. In the Upanishads, I don't know, not a specific one, but it says, "From unreality they lead me to reality. From darkness, ignorance of you, lead me to light, knowledge of you. From death, fear of death, to deathlessness, eternal life. Om, peace, peace." I feel this is actually a common chant I heard. I think it's Asatoma something, you know. So, so anyways, what is it saying in this quote, guys? I think I'll end off the quote tunnel with this. From unreality, the illusory world, lead me to reality. In other words, it says, "From darkness, ignorance of you, lead me to light, knowledge of you." What it means is that we are under the impression this whole cosmos is lifeless, and we righteously feel we are the only thing that is alive. But what if, again, the mind is receiving a field of activity that is? So, what if our whole individual civilization, where we're all members, is in some sense the effect of a field of being? So for me, it's like this is the most profound thing about where the cool part of life comes in after you see it suffering. It's that it is unknown, and it's alive. I am telling you, treat the world as if it's alive and care for that life you see in the world. Because in an empty room, one will eventually be led to innovation. That means regardless of how much you are a materialist, you will eventually learn ideas because you'll get bored because there's change. The law of change is superior to all laws. Because beyond the law of change is the changeless gaze of an unconditional attention. I feel, imagine what the rhythmic collective movement of 8 billion minds would look like. I think this is the whole game of nature. It was occurring collectively, it lies, and then now it's going to consciously become collective. That means we started from a collective unconscious state, then we attained individual conscious, and now we are experiencing the collective unconscious and a state where we will be conscious of the unconscious. And that's going to be, I think, probably 400 years from now. That would be a point where the concept of that point, the child of that civilization may realize it is the ocean and it can choose to appear as an individual. We become, we become uh, conscious of our unity. That means at that point, I think the attention can't discriminate between the whole universe and a separate universe, and inconceivably, it will feel it as everything. So it's as if it's an evolution of an individual conscious part into a collective unconscious field where its consciousness is not language based. So beyond dualism, I say there are two exits: infinity and the void. And this would be the inseparability of the infinite and the void. So it would be maybe like a seventh experience. And how, what the reason I say seventh dimension is because if we entertain the approach till the point that it's like the fourth dimension is time, from the fifth dimension, how Mr. Within would kind of define it. So take this as if it's my a unique thing I'm saying. I consider that if the fourth dimension is a person can go into the same space in 2 different days, and time is that fourth dimension of that differentiates those two spaces, it would be something like the fifth dimension would be an attributeless awareness in times. So this can be said to be the experiencer. This experiencer is arising from an inconceivable mover. That inconceivable originating activity is the sixth dimension. So the fifth dimension that is witnessing multiple times attributelessly is, it's, in other words, the fifth dimension is the effect of the sixth dimension. Okay, and the sixth dimension is an unconditional, technically you can't even speak about it, you know, cause. And when I say the seventh dimension, this would, it, of course, it is so inconceivable that no word would give it justice, but I feel emotionally it would be when man takes over unconditional sense of the causing phenomena. You become the mind of all being. So we're we're like a cell in a blood in the veins of a body, of a human body. Suddenly it's the whole body. It is not the cell, in other words. So anyways, guys, I thanks for tuning in. I feel like sharing one story before I end off. And this story is, you can say it's like the main character of it is The story is from Guru Padmasambhava. Guru Padmasambhava, I don't know if in the story he's in his late 20s or mid 30s, but himself, he's this very liberated being. Even known to kind of like in Tibetan Buddhism, he's known to kind of appear at the age of 8, uh, in the middle of a pond in a lotus. And like right after his 8-year-old kind of self started, giving sermons to the water spirits until the king finds him. Anyways, now that we've kind of looked at his bio, Rupamasambhava finds himself. There's this very beautiful woman crying. She's crying beside this river, and Guru Baba, as he's traveling the world, he suddenly finds himself right by the side of the river, coincidentally where this woman is. And Guru Pamasambhava goes and talks to her, and after a while, the woman's not crying anymore. And then she smiles, and then she laughs. And as happening, what Guru Pamasambhava doesn't know is that this girl is a princess. She's a princess, and there's a spy behind the trees watching her. And so the spy, the moment sees the princess laugh, it's like, okay, this is going too far. I got to tell the king. And so the spy knows who her father is. So she just runs and starts screaming at her father, stop this, before even the king taken you, and the princess is screaming and shouting um, at the king to stop. The king walks in the podium, and all the town have come, you know, and firewood is being brought, and being put right in the center of the town, in the center of the square. And begins giving a speech of wrath. And he says, this is what happens to anyone who goes near my daughter. And so what happens? What happens is, says, burn him. And the daughter was foreseeing this. Her screams go unheard. And Guru Pamasambhava there looks at the princess and he just smiles. And the story goes next level. Guru Pamasambhava, strangely, before the king is even finished to even come, and the king is like, what the the king is like, okay, burn him. And the townspeople are like, they haven't seen anything, so anything is new for them, so the mob merges. you know it's like starve a nation, and the mob mentality is everywhere. So anyways, the mob is there kind of shouting, yeah, burn this guy we don't know, seeing for the first time. And what happens is that the flames are lit, and they're big flames, and suddenly after a while, outs and their hatred has kind of died down, and they're just like gasps. And suddenly the king is looking, and they suddenly see, after the ashes are left, Guru Padmasambhava is untouched. He's untouched. He stands up, and everybody is shocked. It's as if the fire knew better not to touch him. It's as if embodiment of the collective mind. And that means the reason he continued is because he was the mover of the moment, not the fire. it's funny what happens in the story afterwards. Sorry, guys, I got a bit emotional. The king freaks out, and the king's like, "You have to marry my daughter now." I'm not joking. That's actually part of the story. Uh, Guru Padmasambhava had understood the joy unconditionally present as an attention to the phenomena. That means the moment you realize your attention is not the object and subject, there's like it's as if you've just entered the jacuzzi of your own presence. It's like there's kind of Satchidananda bliss to it, you know. There's nothing more joyous than living a life where internally you're not resisting phenomena, you're actually it for what it is, you know. Which means you have to trust the unknown as knowledge. So, anyways, guys, thanks for tuning in. I feel the ultimate teaching of distance can be in just appreciating the presence of your soul, which ultimately means the unknown dimensions to your intelligence as much as the known dimensions to your intelligence. And so once you realize the elegance of the ability and the freedom the attention has to reanimate, it's kind of like every day you can say of beings, because every day we create ourselves into motion. We put ourselves into motion based on our decisions and actions and what how our attention. So once this is made aware of, it's like, as Rumi says, out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there is a place. I'll meet you there. And when the soul sits on that grass, the world is too full to speak about. Then was always earth, was your moment. That means if I ask you, where do the concept of heaven and hell live, isn't it in the same place where the mind is being the moment? The smile of a presence beyond a personality is the beyond the infinite animation of form. And if you don't trust life, I feel its greater dimensions are just inaccessible. They're not authorized in terms. Rise, mankind.